Most AI coding models have one huge problem: they just can't handle Swift. We've all seen the flashy demos of agents building web apps and JavaScript tools in seconds, but as soon as you ask them to touch Swift code, things fall apart fast. Now, why are the world's smartest models failing at iOS development? So that's what we're gonna find out in today's video. Today, I'm putting the top coding agents through the same Swift app coding challenge to see which models can actually handle this task and which ones are just a web dev one-trick pony. I'll give you a little spoiler. One of these models actually aced the test completely. Which one that is, you'll see that later in this video. It's gonna be a lot of fun, so let's dive into it. So first of all, let's address the key issue. Why are AI coding models bad at Swift development? And just to be clear, this is not just my observation. A study titled Evaluating Large Language Models for Code Generation, a Comparative Study on Python, Java, and Swift, found out that across all models tested, including GPT and Claude, performance in Swift was consistently lower than in Python or Java. And the reason boils down to three main bottlenecks that effectively handicap AI when it touches Apple's ecosystem. First, there's the data gap. While the web is flooded with open source JavaScript and Python code, a huge portion of professional Swift code lives behind closed doors of private or commercial repositories. Second, we have API drift. Apple is famous for moving fast and breaking things. Swift UI and Swift's concurrency models have changed more in the last 3 years than some web standards have in a decade. And because most AI models have a knowledge cutoff, they are often trying to write Swift code using outdated rules that simply don't work in the latest version of Xcode. And finally, there's the benchmarking bias. Most of the AI models we're testing today, like Qwen or Grok, are trained to the specific test. They are optimized to pass massive benchmarks like human eval, which are almost entirely focused on Python and web-based logic. Since there aren't many major benchmarks for complex iOS UI, these models simply haven't been graded on their ability to build a functional app. So I chose some of the most popular AI coding models out there, and I gave each one of them the exact same prompt. I tasked each of them to build a simple Tinder-like app clone using Swift called Dog Tinder, where you are presented with different dogs using the Dog CEO API, and you can swipe left or right to choose which ones you like, and if there is a match, you can open up a chat interface to exchange funny messages with the matched dog. So it's supposed to be cute and simple enough for an agent to complete, and it also involves some interesting challenges like building a swipe animation functionality in native Swift. So for the tests themselves, we are going to start from the worst performer going all the way to the best one. And in the worst performing place, we unfortunately have the new Qwen 3 Coder Next model. Qwen has been advertising this new model as an open source alternative to heavyweights like Kimi or Claude, with a smaller model size but a higher performance. And while that may be true for web apps, it did not hold up for the Swift challenge, unfortunately. So whenever possible, I tried using their own CLI tools that were available for that model, and in this case, I used the Qwen CLI tool to conduct this challenge. And once it was done generating the code, I could not open the project file that Qwen had produced, so then I prompted it to fix the error that was presented when I tried to open the file, but even then, Qwen could not fix the error and instead provided me with a long README file on how to build this project on my own from scratch, and then copy the files over to the project folder, which is not something I want to do manually for this challenge, because that would defeat the purpose. And as you will see later, I noticed that some of the models had a very hard time producing the final collection of files for this project, which we could open successfully on a first try. So for these cases, like Qwen here, I decided to give it an easier challenge instead. So I created a new iOS app project on Xcode manually, and I decided that this could be a good time to try out the new coding intelligence functionality that is now packaged with the newest version of Xcode. And this is pretty cool because finally Xcode has their own AI assistant feature. So I hooked it up to my OpenRouter account and chose the Qwen 3 Coder Next model from the dropdown and tried the challenge again. Even with all this hand-holding, Quen still could not produce a successful project on the first try because here we got some issues with accurately setting up the Swift models. And now with the new AI assistant feature, we can highlight all of these issues and then task the assistant to generate the fix for all the selected issues at once. So finally, after a few rounds of prompting Quen to fix the remaining issues, we finally got a working version of the dog Tinder app. But honestly, the result was pretty bad. It could not even load the images from the dog CEO API, and the whole UI was also very primitive and not exciting at all. Not to mention that there was a bug in the matches section where none of the matches were actually appearing. So unfortunately, Quen totally failed the Xcode app challenge. So moving on to our second to last place, we have Grok with its Grok Code Fast model. For this one, I tried to use it through the VS Copilot extension on VS Code, and once again I ran into the same issue where Grok was not able to produce all the project files needed for the complete Swift project package, and instead it provided me with instructions how to copy the files manually. So once again, I had to revert back to using the AI assistant on Xcode by calling the Grok model from OpenRouter. And Grok also ran into a couple of issues, so I had to prompt it twice to fix the remaining errors, but after all of that, it was able to successfully complete the app. And by the first look of it, Grok did a terrible job with the design. The design was not exciting at all, and there weren't even any sections where we could see the matches. The only reason why I put Grok higher than Quen is because, at least from a functionality standpoint, everything is working, including the chat functionality. But to be honest, they both were very close in terms of poor performance. And nothing about this app seems exciting or visually pleasing. So I wouldn't say Grok failed the challenge, but it does get the lowest passing grade it can possibly get. Next up on our leaderboard is Kimi with their newest Kimi K2.5 model. And Kimi had the same issue as Quen, where when using their native CLI, it produced the project file, but I could not open it. Even after fixing it through the CLI, it did not resolve the issue. So once again, for the Kimi's test, I had to use the built-in Xcode AI Assistant feature with Kimi K2 provided by OpenRouter. And Kimi's performance was similar to that of Quen's and Grok's because it did not complete the challenge on the first try. So I had to prompt it again to fix the remaining issues. But after just one round of issue fixing, Kimi was able to produce the final result, and this version was actually a step up from Quen and Grok because at least now we got an app that actually looks like a Tinder-like app. And we now got this nice left and right swipe animation along with the like and nope stickers on the sides and a fancy pop-up when we got a match. But the animation was very buggy and very finicky. At times I couldn't even see the image at all because it was floating somewhere off screen. But at least Kimi was able to store the matches properly. And we actually got a section where we could see our matches and open any of them and start chatting with the specific dog. So this is already a big step up from Quen and Grok. But if I have to compare it with other examples you'll see later in this video, I would say it is still a subpar result. And that's why I give Kimi a lower place on the leaderboard. And next up we have Gemini 3 Pro. And this one is interesting because I got totally different results when testing the same model from their own CLI versus from the Xcode's AI assistant. So first, let's see what we got when we used the Gemini CLI. It does say that the model is still in preview mode on the CLI, so maybe that was the core issue, but once again, when I prompted it with the same prompt I used for every model in this challenge, it could not give me a project file at the end. And this is because in order to create an Xcode project file, you first need to create a YAML file with the project details and then use the CodeGen CLI command to generate it. But for some reason, some models refuse to do it or don't know how to do it. But nonetheless, once I prompted Gemini to specifically create the file, it did so, and I just needed to give it access to execute the CodeGen command. And once we opened the project, we got an asset error, but that was quick for Gemini to fix. And once that was solved, the app was finally compiling, but the result was bad. Surprisingly bad. It was broken. The matches system was not working properly and everything was buggy. So at this point, I was willing to give Gemini a failing grade. But just out of curiosity, I decided to give Gemini another shot and conduct the challenge using Xcode's native AI assistant. by running Gemini 3 Pro through Open Router. And once I did that, this time it got it right on the first try. And not only that, but the app was amazingly good. I mean, the design was great, the functionality was in place, it even added a nice little logo on top. Honestly, there was nothing to fault in this version of the app. So I'm a bit baffled as to why running the same prompt through the same model, but through different AI coding tools, produced such two distinct results. But nonetheless, I was very impressed with the version that Gemini finally gave me through Xcode's tooling, and on the first try, might I add. So that's why I put Gemini a bit higher on the leaderboard, because the end result was actually pretty great. Okay, so next up on the leaderboard, we have GPT 5.3 Codex, and since OpenAI has their own Codex app, I decided to conduct a challenge from their own app. And unlike the previous models we have seen so far, GPT 5.3 was actually able to produce the final working product on the first try, so this is already a big step up. But I gotta say, the app itself was not pretty exciting. It had a very monotone blue color theme, and the biggest issue that bugged me is that it couldn't fit the width of the image within the frame of the app. So for some dogs, you ended up with a very stretched out container that goes outside of the bounds of the app. So this is a big design flaw that Codex was not able to produce properly. But the app itself is functional with all the necessary UI elements, and we also got the matches section working properly, where we could chat with the dogs. So the reason why I give GPT 5.3 such a high place on the leaderboard is that this is the first model that was actually able to produce the entire Swift project package without any hand-holding or without setting up the Xcode project beforehand. So overall, not too bad, but also not too exciting. All right, and finally we get to the first place on the leaderboard. And I'm just gonna give you a moment to guess which model could that be. And yes, I think we all know which model that is. It is, of course, Opus 4.6, which absolutely aced this challenge right off the bat. I prompted it with the same prompt as the other models, but I used their own Claude Code CLI tool, and I just needed to provide the necessary permissions, and the model did everything on its own, including creating a fully functional Xcode project file without me having to set it up beforehand. And not only that, but the app itself was absolutely beautiful. The design was there, the animations were nice and fluid, the matches section was working correctly, as well as the chat window. The only thing we didn't get in this version was a fancier logo like Gemini produced in the previous versions. But other than that, this was the best looking version of them all, and it even managed to produce this on the first try. So I would say Opus performance is absolutely incredible compared to all the other models, so it definitely deserves the first place on the leaderboard. But wait, there's more. Here's a little bonus for you folks. There is still one more model that we need to review that hasn't been shown on the leaderboard yet. You see, while I was making this video, there was an announcement that GLM just released their latest model, version 5, and they are bold enough to claim that this model scores even higher in coding than Opus 4.6. So obviously I had to test it out on the same Swift challenge. And since GLM does not have their own CLI tool, I once again used Xcode's AI Assistant tool by hooking it up to Open Router and using GLM5 from there. And first of all, GLM did not complete this challenge on the first try, so that already shows a worse performance than Opus 4.6. But secondly, I had to go through 3 rounds of bug fixes to finally get it to compile successfully. So let's see what the final result is for GLM5. As you can see, it already looks like a failing grade to me. It cannot seem to load up any of the dog images, it does not have the swipe functionality, and what's even worse, it only cycles through 3 dogs and then shows a message that there are no more dogs available. And furthermore, if we go to the matches section, it cannot click on any of the matches to open the chat interface with any of the dogs, so this section is clearly not finished. So judging by this result, where do we put GLM based on this performance? Well, I'm afraid we have to put it in the second to last place, just above Quen, because this performance was just not acceptable and not nearly as good as any of the other models. So stating that GLM5 is stronger than Opus 4.6 is a pretty bold claim. Now, I haven't tested this model on any other coding tasks, and it might just be the case that maybe for simpler web dev projects, it works just as well or maybe even better than Opus 4.6, but this is definitely not a good model for coding in Swift. So what did we learn today? Clearly, while the AI revolution is moving at light speed, the Swift problem for these models is still very real. Opus 4.6 and GPT 5.3 proved that if the model is large enough and the reasoning is strong enough, they can overcome the lack of open source Swift code data. But for models like Qwen and Grok, the data gap and API drift we talked about earlier are clearly hitting them hard. And I was also surprised how helpful Xcode's new AI assistant actually is for Swift apps. We could clearly see this in the difference between the two Gemini app versions. So if you're an iOS developer, it's probably helpful to use their internal AI tooling to get better results. So there you have it, folks. I hope you enjoyed this leaderboard breakdown. I think this opens up a wider conversation about the fact that maybe we should start having language-specific models. Because clearly a lot of these models are more heavily biased towards web apps, JavaScript, or Python projects. But for some bespoke coding solutions, we might need some custom coding models. But what is your take on all of this? Let us know in the comment section down below. And folks, if you enjoyed this video, please let me know by smashing that like button underneath the video, and also don't forget to subscribe to our channel. This has been Andres from BetterStack, and I will see you in the next videos.